which in that case to me is a complete failure in your job. Many data professionals, actually, the way they operate is people come to them and say, hey, can we build this report or can you build this metric? And they just do whatever they're being asked without actually thinking and without adding any value along the way. These people will be replaced by, ChatGPT before we know it. If you don't add value, if you don't ask questions, if you don't give any valuable input, and you're not challenging the business and the product to do better using your data, and you're not pushing the boundaries of what's possible, then I would seriously question whether you're the right person for the job. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today I've got in the studio Akosh Moroy. Akosh and I've been connected for a long time, and he recently reached out following one of the posts I made about how data leaders and data professionals need to lead. And he had some feedbacks and questions about that. And I just thought it's a good conversation, it's a good discussion that others can benefit from as well. So I just thought that it will be nice for both of us to just have a chat, have it recorded and uploaded. So, Akosh, why don't you just start by very quickly introducing yourself, and then what was your question or feedback, and we can start the conversation there.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Shahar, for having me on this conversation. I think that these are really, really exciting topics. So, yeah, briefly about me. I'm Akos. I'm an engineering leader for decades now. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. And yeah, I tell you a lot about engineering leadership and growth and personal growth and team dynamic topics. And this is why this topic caught my eye a little bit. So, what it was about basically is that Shafar, you posted actually a couple of times along the lines that when you're coaching people about career progression and how they should grow and move forward, do you recommend that they figure out what they do, how it fits into the organization's business? Does it generate revenue? Like, how is it tied to the core business of the organization? And you also recommend them that they should basically come up with initiatives that ties into this vision, and basically instead of trying to sell kind of technical solutions, why don't they drive business initiatives? And my observation is, yes, of course, everybody should be aware of how their contribution directly drives the business that they are in. But at the same time, I believe that in a lot of roles and in a lot of levels within a multi-level organization, it's not the best advice to tell people that they should just drive their own business initiatives within the org to move forward. And my observation in this case is that usually there are people dedicated in the organization who are driving the business direction. And if you just, out of your own initiative, try to come up with new business directions and opportunities, or even engage with clients and kind of try to talk to them to see where the value would be generated for them and so forth, then the people who are actually driving this in the org, then you would have a hard time collaborating with them. And this is kind of my immediate but to this initiative on like how to balance understanding and driving new business initiatives forward, but not to step on the toes of those high level decision makers who are basically appointed by the organization to drive this.
So first of all, I appreciate you bringing this up, and I think that I did get a lot of I made several posts to that effect, and I still stand behind it, and I'll explain why. But I do feel like this is a topic that some people find very controversial. So I appreciate you stepping in and asking the question and bringing up this discussion. I'll ask you first. If we think about this, magic quadrant, right, where you have two dimensions. One of them is, let's say, how good your data or technology is, right? And the other one is how successful your business is. Let's say that you have state of the art technology, the best in class data platform, but your business is failing. Is that success?
Of course not.
Yeah. So I think that's the first thing we need to establish, right? And a lot of data teams and a lot of data professionals, what they think is, I'm just going to build a data platform, I'm just going to build a prediction model, whatever. I'm just going to do whatever analysis people ask me to do, but it's not actually resulting in any material change to the business, which in that case to me is a complete failure in your job. Okay. Now, if we think of levels that matter just as a reference, right? Level 3, level 4, level 5 is like early career. I would say at level 3, 4, if you only do what people ask you to do and you don't bear any like responsibility for the business, maybe that's okay, maybe. But At some point, there has to be a point where it's expected that whatever you do contributes to the business and adds value to the business, and that you're pushing the business forward, the company forward, the product forward, helping make the company better. Okay, that's number one. The second question, that I think it was actually Vishagashi, who was my VP of data engineering at Meta. Like, we had a similar conversation at some point in the past. And he asked me, he said, Shahar, let's say you go to a country you've never been to before, somewhere in Africa, right? Let's say you go to Zimbabwe and you land in the airport, you take a taxi driver and you ask them to take you to a nearest city, and you sit in the back seat and you've got your Google Maps open and you actually see that they're taking you the long way around. Or you see that wherever they're going, there's blockage in the road, or there's too much traffic. What do you do in that case? Do you just sit quietly and let them drive because they're the driver, or do you ask the question and do you challenge their approach? And I think it's really important because a lot of people, I think, has this misconception that the fact that somebody else is driving right now and the fact that somebody else has that job doesn't mean that you cannot ask the question, doesn't mean that you cannot challenge, it doesn't mean that you cannot offer alternatives or say, hey, listen, like, I think that this road might be blocked, or I think there's too much traffic, or I think there might be a shorter way, so let's take the shorter way. I think that you're allowed to do that. Will people get upset about that? Sometimes, yes, possibly. Some people might get upset. I don't think that people getting upset or stepping on people's toes means that you shouldn't be doing these things. I mean, I think that in the end of the day, people get rewarded for doing what's right for the company.
Yeah, I'm gonna play a little bit of the devil's advocate, right? Because especially because we're talking about career advancement in organizations and also reasonably sized organizations. So in a lot of cases in these organizations, there is a hierarchy already established. There is agendas for everyone, and also they are the ones who are either gonna support you moving upwards or not. So what I hear you saying, generally yes, but I also feel it's a little bit idealistic. When you look at these cases in reality, a lot of times people want their reports to deliver on their needs. I'm not saying this is good or not. I'm just saying that this is how it is in a lot of cases, is that, if somebody has teams reporting to them, they pretty much want those teams to deliver on the, whatever goals were set at a quarterly or half a year or whatever. And a lot of times that's the kind of only expectation. And if you want to advance in such a situation, then, saying that, yeah, I could do that, but I don't think that's a good idea and I'd rather do something else, is not something that might sit very well. So so I think that it's important to realize the situations where identifying new opportunities at which are way outside of the scope of your original mandate is good, but also there's opportunities where this is uh, you know in the best case neutral, in the worst case it can actually backfire.
You're right. So, a few things on that, right? First of all, we need to distinguish between what you do and how you do it, right? You also need to execute well on that. So, you need to make sure that, first of all, you're not failing at your day job. And if you're, let's say, a data engineer, but you spend all your time, talking to marketing about how they build their campaigns or whatever, but you're not actually doing your job as a data engineer, I don't think that's going to help you progress in your career. At the same time, if you're a data engineer and marketing is asking you to do something in a certain way and you don't think that's the right thing to do, I think that it's very important that, you have that conversation with them. You need to be careful about how you have that conversation with them to make sure that, because people are sensitive, right? And they might feel like, oh, why is this person telling me how to do my job? Or why is this person telling me that what I'm asking for is completely wrong? People might get very defensive, people get upset, and all of that. So you need to do it in a way that doesn't hurt you in the long run. You need to build good relationship, you need to build trust, you need to suggest things in a way that make the people want to receive them as well, and do it in a consultation with them, and not just say, no, you're stupid, what you're saying is wrong. But instead of that, saying, hey, did you think about what happens if we do this, or did you think about the implication of doing that? Have we considered another approach? Do it gently and explore, and also don't make too many assumptions, and don't assume that nobody else knows how to do their job, because that will not land very well with a lot of people. So you have to be good at doing these things, you need to have relationships and credibility, and you need to lead by influencing and not by just telling people, because otherwise it's just never going to work. So that's number one. But I think, again, like, one of the problems that data professionals today have is when you go to the doctor, you don't say, "Hey, doctor, can you please prescribe me, 500 milligrams of this and, a knee surgery?" You come and you tell them the symptoms, you tell them what problems you have and what pains you're experiencing. And they have the knowledge, they have the experience. So they diagnose and they tell you, okay, these are the symptoms. So this is what you need. Many data professionals, actually, the way they operate is people come to them and say, "Hey, can we build this report or can you build this metric?" And they just do whatever they're being asked without actually thinking and without adding any value along the way. These people will be replaced by, ChatGPT before we know it. Because if you don't add value, if you don't ask questions, if you don't give any valuable inputs, and you don't, on the value chain, you're just a technical role, you will probably vanish and disappear. But at the same time, as a data professional, you're probably the closest person to the data, right? So just like the doctor, you've studied for all these years, you know different methodologies, you know different way of doing things, you know what data is available, what data is not available, where can we compromise, where can we not compromise. It's totally valid to say, listen, like, you're asking for this. Actually, we've tried this, a few times before. It doesn't really work. How about we consider trying a different approach? I don't see why that's very controversial, or why that will, not go down well with people if you do it in a respectful and nice way.
Yes, I agree. I do agree that you should be conscious of driving business value. At the same time, I believe that a lot of times the dynamics within the organization are such that the business decision are going to be ultimately made by, say, the product people, or even the CEO, or a combination of product, CEO, sales, and so forth. And you have to be prepared to enter these discussions and come up with your suggestions and walk away without convincing these people.
Absolutely. I mean, you will never get it 100% your way. That's for sure. But I mean, do you have a responsibility here? If you see the business going in the wrong direction, or do you see the product building a feature that is not the right thing to build, you can challenge them and say, why are you building this? How do we know it's going to work? What have we tested? What have we tried? Do we have any experiments? Do we have any data proving this? Do we want to do something like that? Look, in the end of the day, they might still decide to build it because that's what they want to build. You've tried, you will not win all the cases, right? But that's okay. I mean, you're still playing your role and you still have the responsibility.
Yeah, that is something I do agree with. It's just, yeah. So basically, the point is that to make these things fruitful and these engagements fruitful, and all the initiative and ideas that you might bring up have a positive contribution or have been perceived as a positive contribution, even if you don't convince other people about them, right? You have to really up your game in terms of communication, in terms of engagement, in terms of building relationships. But let's face it, you don't know everything they know. You might not be talking to the same customers they are talking to. You're not seeing some of the strategic planning or some of the high level data of the company that they are seeing. So sometimes you just don't have all the information to drive your thinking forward as they do. And so this is something that one has to be prepared for when you enter these kind of discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about, I think you started mentioning about disruptive questions and disrupting the business. I think that sometimes people don't see the things that you see, or you come at things from a different angle. And it's okay to ask a lot of questions. I think specifically one of the posts I was talking about on LinkedIn was, when a data engineer asked me how to grow their career, I opened their company's website. It's a pet food company. And I just started asking a lot of questions about the business. Okay, looking at the website, how did you decide which products to put in the front page? How do you decide on prices of each product? How do you decide on the categories and all of that? These are business questions, right? I mean, I agree. There's somebody in the business whose job is to make those decisions. But can you add value with data? And the answer is 100% yes. So you should ask these questions. You should go to the product manager who's responsible for the homepage and say, how do we decide which products to present? And maybe if we're not using enough data, maybe we can use some signals that we have to decide, based on the customer, based on their location, based on the browser, based on all sorts of different things. Maybe we have cookies. We can decide what products they're more likely to buy. Maybe we can try and experiment, right? When we think of prices, right? A lot of companies don't think of pricing as a data problem, but actually, I mean, scraping competitor prices, coming up with a data set that shows, your prices, your competitor prices, and helping you stay competitive in the market is a data project, right? So I think that there are a lot of things that you can do as a data person to push your business forward, and people are not thinking about it, but you are seeing the opportunity. And for you to come in and ask these questions and propose these things, I think is going to go a very long way.
Hopefully so. I mean, I think that this is also kind of the hallmark of the quality of the organization. What if you hit all these walls and you just can't penetrate them? What if you come up with a database approach? Like, let's take your example, like, database approach of identifying competitors' pricing, coming up with better ways to position products, and you just can't get through. They just say that, you're a data person, I'm a salesperson, I've been doing this for decades, I know how to, price our offerings, or I am talking to the customers, you don't understand the customers, and so what do you do in that case? Because in that case, you are relegated to only delivering on the technical aspects of your projects. What would be your recommendation in that case? Because then it seems that the personal growth within that organization is limited.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is obvious, right? There are some companies in which you hit the ceiling and you cannot grow anymore. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want to stay in a company that doesn't, facilitate and doesn't support my growth as an individual, or do I want to find something different? The hard truth is, you're right. There are some companies that are very top down, very hierarchical. People don't want opinions. It's not just companies, right? In certain countries, in certain environments, that's going to be the working landscape, right? And you only get projects, and the expectation is you just need to execute, and that's it. And I don't think you can grow much in these kind of companies, in these kind of environments. I mean, it puts a very low ceiling over the top of your head. You're going to hit the ceiling very soon. And then what do you do?
Yep.
It's a question that everybody needs to ask themselves. It's perfectly fine to stay in this company forever and, get paid, pay the bills, and live your life. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to continue growing, and if your goal is to get to something bigger in your career and try different things and all of that, then you're probably not in a place that can support that.
Yeah. I think it's also important in this case to, as you say, like balance personal goals with your kind of drive to move forward within the organization, because of course your personal situation has multiple angles to it and multiple dimensions to it as well. And like, how do you, reconcile that and reach a balance of, do you want to rock the boat hard, or do you just want to kind of cruise along for now and let's see how it goes later? Those are really difficult decisions to make, but they are also very important to navigate person.
Absolutely. And I think, there are times in life when you're young and hungry and, you just want to keep doing crazy things and work, and you're not limited. And there are times when you have a newborn baby and you're barely sleeping, and, you're juggling too many balls in the air, and all you want is just stability, right? You don't want work to be crazy and challenging. You just want it to be stable and to be there. So I think that you're absolutely right. Like, you need to see the full picture and say, okay, can I actually put myself in a position where I disrupt my life right now, or disrupt myself to grow and to get to where I want to be, or am I happy where I am? And I mean, it's an individual thing, and both answers are legit at different points in time, and it's your choice. Or make it a choice, right? And if you decide to stay, don't, go too hard on yourself that you're not growing, because that was your decision.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other thing some people might do is, if I see people who decide to stay in an environment that doesn't foster much growth, but at the same time they start a side hustle, or they start doing something else on the side, contributing to open source projects, creating content, doing things on the side that will help them achieve more growth somewhere else, right? Or prepare to the next phase of their career, spend a lot of time going to meetups, networking, finding mentors outside their company, and doing all the things that will help them make their next career move, not tomorrow morning, but like in 1 year from now, but they're going to be in a different position. So another thing to consider, right? It's not just stay or go. Like there's a big spectrum in between that you can consider.
Yep, yep. That's very much so. Yeah, and basically this is what Michael Math was mostly about. A lot of times you're not in an organization which really anticipates your initiatives. They just want you to have whatever they gave you done.
I'll also add that, what people don't realize, if you want to grow as a data leader, it's even more important to know the business and to develop business sense and product sense and to be challenging and asking those questions. Because in the end of the day, as a data engineer, you can probably get by building a wrong data set that nobody uses or build a dashboard that nobody uses. But if you're the chief data officer of the company and you're not making the metrics move using your data, and you're not challenging the business and the product to do better using your data, and you're not pushing the boundaries of what's possible, then I would seriously question whether you're the right person for the job. And again, you have to do it in the right way. You cannot just disrupt people, and you cannot just step over people's toes and come across as very aggressive and those kind of things. I mean, that's not going to go down very well, 100%. But at the same time, you have a responsibility, and you have to make sure that you're pushing the company. And I think that every data professional, even if you're just starting, right? If we think about career growth, then in the end, like that, this is what you're going to get to, right? Chief data officer kind of role or whatever. So, okay, if I'm level 5 or 6 right now, but I want to get to level 10 or 11 or whatever, then I need to think about what does that look like and how do I gradually build myself towards that.
Yeah, still balancing this with how it kind of catering to the immediate requests that you receive as well.
Yeah, and fundamentally, you shouldn't be failing at your job, right? If you're failing at your job, but you're doing all these extra curriculum things, and that's not gonna go down very well either.
Here, I think the big threshold comes when you can get sponsorship to actually go on a significant size pilot on it. When you can say that maybe I did my homework. I showed a small POC of how this could look like, but then to actually see the potential benefits, we have to embark on a bigger project. And if you can get someone to sign off on that, so that you can put resources behind it, I think that's a big turning point in this case.
And we both know, right? If you want to borrow a lot of money, you need a good credit score. So you need to build a lot of credibility before you go and throw yourself into these kind of big projects and ask people to sponsor that. And you cannot just come in on day one and try to sell the organization a vision, because nobody's going to buy that. You need to prove yourself first, your ability to execute well. You need to show that and demonstrate that you know what you're doing, and gradually, you will receive more support from the rest of the organization.
Yep. And then you rinse and repeat. Yeah.
Exactly. So, thanks everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content and you want to get more of that. If you have any questions for me and Akosh, you can drop it in the comments, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks.